This is Andrew Bosin. I am a technology attorney. I specialize in SaaS. I work with SaaS software entrepreneurs, providers, vendors, early stage companies in Delaware, C Corps all across the country, doing everything from getting your company off the ground, incorporating Delaware shareholder agreements, investor agreements, to your customer subscription agreements. This video is for informational purposes only, not for legal advice. If you want legal advice, you can call me at 201-446-9643. So what's the purpose of this video? The purpose of this video is really to talk about why SaaS startups fail. I've built one SaaS company with partners and I've exited. I was intimately involved in the sales and marketing processes, and we even took SaaS go-to-market sales training with a leading SaaS sales trainer out in Silicon Valley. Spent 1 to 2 years heavily involved in the marketing process, canvassing, getting leads, and learning how to do that whole process. And it was really eye-opening and just showed how hard selling SaaS is. Right now, in addition to my law firm, I'm also building a sports analytics platform, which is launched, dealing with youth sports. It's management, of the scheduling teams and rosters. On the back end is a AI predictive analytics algorithm that will, with KPIs and metrics, will help identify the best talent to pick the best team. So, why do startups fail? And I guess I'll do a little slant towards, SaaS startups. And mind you, I speak to startups all day. I've been counseling startups for more than 12 years, and I've been a business lawyer for 30 years. So I've counseled very, very wealthy, real estate landowners, family trusts, family offices, people who own, multi-million dollar businesses, to early stage startups that have very little to no funding. Biggest issue I see is just lack of money. I'll get calls from startups and they can't even afford my legal fees, and my fees are extremely reasonable because most people tell me they've called around and my fees are very reasonable. Carrying on with that theme, I just don't think that some startups really understand just how much money it's going to take to get past the concept, the development stage, go into product marketing, sales, legal, building out teams. I think there's some startups out there that don't realize that if you have a mobile app or a SaaS app and iOS or Android does a push, you got to pay your developers to fix, the wonkiness of, how it appears on a phone or a desktop, or a bug or a defect. I'm not sure that's really in the equation. There's no budgeting for legal. A lot of people believe they can do the marketing themselves, and I got to tell you, in my second startup, and in my first startup, we were killing it in marketing. I mean, we just, we really, put the pedal to the metal. Especially in my second startup, I'm seeing, all the messages on Slack, the teams, the way we're using AI to build out, sales and marketing products, diagrams, processes to help us sell to clients better. And there's a lot of people doing it, a lot of very successful professional people that are working on this, that have, 25 to 40 years of entrepreneurial experience, who really know what they're doing in terms of what do we need to build, what are we solving for, how do we get it out there, and, let's do it. As opposed to an early stage startup, a bunch of people that have never built a company before, lack of money. Number two, no ability to raise money. I can't tell you how many times I try to give free advice or mentor startups, and I talk about how much money it's really going to take to build a startup. And when people try to go out and raise, some of the questions I'll ask them are, well, you're doing financial projections, and most times it's, what do you mean? I mean, well, if you're sitting in a room with a sophisticated investor, they're going to ask you in Q3, your projections say, gross income is projected at X. Well, what if your sales are lower in that quarter? And, most times the responses are, we don't do projections. So, that, to me, that just shows what's the quality of the investor that they're looking at. In my first startup, if an investor said that, my CFO would on his laptop, revise it, boom, and be able to give the investor back the number in a millisecond. You got to know your market, you got to know your product, you got to know all your costs, every single cost in the chain you have to know. I think the other thing that's really important is I get feedback from early stage startups where I'll talk about, how do you guys plan to keep going without money? And I get a typical response of, oh, well, we're confident product sales will fund our venture. And I try to give them the best advice as possible. And my response is, well, 90% of startups fail. You're probably not going to have a lot of sales during the first year of your startup. So how are you going to keep going? So I think that, you got to remove ego from the equation, and you have to really be pragmatic about it, which is if you don't have what I would call champions, which are maybe customers that that want to use your product 'cause it's a better product, or connections that want to use your product. If you don't have those champions that realize you built something better, realize you solved for a problem, and really need to use your product, you're really going to have a problem with traction and getting sales. Your customers are going to really want to see the champions using the product, and that they're having a successful go at using the product. One of the other things that I always think that gets in the way of building a startup is ego, especially if one or two members of the team want to do everything, or believe that they're always right, or don't want to engage in a diatribe with the other members. Another thing that I believe hurts startups, which I can't really say it's a negative, but I do see people call me and say, hey, we want to bring on an advisor and give them some stock. We really believe that's the way we're going to boost product sales. And, I'll say, well, look, you got to do milestones in the agreement. You got to make sure that they agree to get stock, but that each month there's a number of sales calls they have to attend, that they have to hit sales leads marks. So maybe, in month one, it's how many sales leads, month two, how many sales leads, they have to help close deals. Again, if this is what you're depending on to try to boost sales within your company, you're probably going to set yourself up for failure. I do have a nationwide technology law firm specializing in SaaS software. If you want to speak to me, I normally give free consults about legal work. I don't speculate or engage in semantics about how good your product is or how bad your product is, or give free advice about sales and marketing. If you need a lawyer who can help you draft sound, effective, smart SaaS agreements to protect you, please call me, Andrew Bosin, at 201-446-9643.